Back in 2014, the IBRT was invited to travel to Big Falls and perform at a town event in the purpose of which has been lost to antiquity. Whatever the case, we thought it would be appropriate to create a brand new play to mark the occasion. And from that came the intrepid Kayak Annie, Northwoods librarian. With her trusty kayak, the Unshakable 3, Annie paddles from marsh to river, from lake to stream, making sure even the most remote patron has access to literature. Presented this evening with an actual librarian in the title role for the first time. So strap on your life vests and zip up your book bags. It's time for Kayak Annie on the Icebox Radio Theater.
Stand by your radios, listeners. It's time again for that whitewater literacy advocate of the Great Northwoods, Kayak Annie, borderland librarian. Riding the rivers and streams of the most remote reaches of the land of 10,000 lakes, Librarian Annie with her faithful kayak, the Unsinkable 3, bring the gift of books and reading to the loggers and prospectors of this great land.
A stack of woodworking magazines. This'll do wonders to pass the long winter, Annie.
Just doing my job.
Encyclopedia Volume M through Z. Now I can do my school report on Madagascar, Annie.
Stay in school and read a little for fun every day.
Mystery novels? This will pass the long days while my fella's off working in the woods. You're a blessing to our people, Annie.
Books are the blessing, missus. Me and my faithful kayak, Unsinkable 3, are merely the messengers.
Yes, Kayak Annie was beloved by all of the people of this great land. And because of her skill with the paddle and fearlessness on the churning waters of area rivers and streams, she could bring the gift of reading to virtually everyone. Our story begins just as the spring melt was at its worst. Annie paddled furiously downriver toward the cabin of old Nels Nelson, a retired logger with a fondness for horror novels and histories of the Chinese emperors. It took every bit of her kayaking skill, but Annie managed to arrive at Nell's cabin without dampening a single book.
Hello, Nels. It's Kayak Annie. I've managed to arrive at your cabin without dampening a single book.
Oh, greetings, child. I didn't think I'd seen you this month, but with the river so high and all.
Oh, it would take a lot more than high water to stop Kayak Annie.
Oh, but maybe so. But I have news.
Just a moment, Nels. Look what I've brought you.
Oh my, books.
Yes, there's a collection of short stories from Bram Stoker and a new book on the Ming Dynasty.
Oh, thank you kindly, Annie. I'll get to the books I borrowed from you last time in just a moment. But first, pray tell, where are you headed from here?
The Campbell Homestead next. Then back again to my little cabin on the Muskeg near Big Falls.
Campbell, that's the family downriver apiece?
The same. They have 2 young ones with schooling to do. And without these books, I fear for their education.
Oh, fear for more than that, Annie. For to reach the Campbell's cabin, you have to travel through Bog Marsh Swamp, don't you?
Well, yes. But that calm water holds no fears for me. Especially this time of year. Before our friend the mosquito comes out of hibernation.
Oh, there are creatures great and small in that swamp, Annie, and I fear for your life should you proceed on this well-intentioned but ill-advised journey for the sake of literacy.
It's just a swamp, Nels.
Yes, but there's something you should know. Last month, old Bill McGillicuddy, the prospector.
Of course, lives upriver. Likes romance novels and cookbooks.
Oh, that's him. Last month, old Bill staggered up to this very door. His face was ashen. His eyes were bloodshot. His greatcoat and dungarees had been torn to ribbons.
Heavens, was it bandits?
Worse. He came in here, sat at my table while I brewed him a cup of strong coffee.
Very neighborly.
Thank you. And he told me that he'd just seen in Bog Marsh Swamp, he'd seen the wild man.
The wild man? You mean that ridiculous story about the hairy creature who's 10 feet tall?
Ridiculous story. I would think a learned woman like yourself would have more respect for the wonders of nature.
I have respect for folklore, which is just what the wild man of Bog Marsh Swamp is.
Well, tell that to Bill McGillicuddy. Weren't no folklore that tipped over his canoe and scattered his provisions. I tell you, the wild man is real, and he's on a rampage.
Now, Nels, you know as well as I do there is no scientific proof that any such wild man exists. He's just a story dreamed up around the campfires of our fair region to entertain and perhaps frighten the young folks. Rather like the Knickerbocker tales of New York's Hudson Valley.
I don't know from science, of course, but I seen huge footprints over near Bogmarsh Swamp, and that's proof enough for me. Please, Annie, don't continue this ill-advised mission to bring book learning to the Campbell's young'uns. It's not worth it, not at the cost of your own life.
Your concern moves me, Nels. It really does. But I have a mission to fulfill. And after paddling the treacherous white water of our territory, I can hardly allow myself to be stopped by the story of some hairy beast, can I?
Oh, Annie, be careful. Where would we be without books and your smiling face to deliver them?
Annie bid farewell to her friend and set back out to head downstream. The river carried Annie swiftly but safely through the territory until she came to the bend where fate dealt her a choice.
There it is, the tributary that leads to Bogmarsh Swamp and the Campbell's cabin. Nels Nelson did appear sincere in his silly warnings. Oh, what should I do? Take the tributary and risk running into the fabled wild man? Or stay on the river and speed away home? Oh, listen to yourself, Annie. You know what you're supposed to do.
And with that, Kayak Annie gave a mighty heave with her paddle and pushed her fabled conveyance, the unsinkable 3, up the tributary toward Bogmarsh Swamp. A few minutes later, the water grew still and heavy with green slime as Annie paddled forward. Though she continued to tell herself that all was well in this marshy landscape, her eyes grew 2 sizes as she scanned the shoreline for anything.
It is so quiet and still in here. This truly makes a change from the roaring river. Oh, stop it, Annie. Stories of wild men are pure fiction and not to be taken literally. You might as well be afraid of Mr. Wells' Martians or Mr. Stoker's Count. There are no wild men, and that's final. What's that? Something moving through the brush? Yes, of course. Probably a deer. Or at the very worst, a bear. Neither likely to bother me as I paddle out here in the middle of the swamp. But to get to the Campbells, I have to portage up ahead. All right, Annie, get your nerve up. These books won't deliver themselves.
Annie's kayak slid slowly through the swampy waters toward the far bank. A portage trail was visible cutting into the wilderness, but it looked to be nothing more than a sunless corridor of shadows, as eerie and strange a place of woods as could be seen in a region as lovely as Minnesota.
All right, just about there. Give it a good run up onto the muddy shore, and... there! Unsinkable 3's nearly half out of the water. If memory serves, the portage is only about 100 yards. If I hurry, I'll be through it in no time.
In a flick of a bobcat's whiskers, Annie had a Duluth pack of books strapped to her back and her kayak resting on her shoulders. But as she began to step cautiously up the trail, she almost wished her beloved unsinkable 3 was a standard Northland canoe. For to portage a kayak, one has to flip it upside down and put one's head directly into the cockpit, the large central hole where the paddler sits when the craft is on the water. This means that Annie could only see the ground directly beneath her feet, and the larger forest, as dark and foreboding a place as she had ever walked in, was hidden from view.
Well, if I were a wild man, I would certainly pick this moment to attack. I can't see a thing to either side in this dark and foreboding wood. Not that I believe in wild men, of course. What's that? What's that? Nothing, Annie. That's what it was. You have a fine imagination. But you'd best leave it for the fiction section. It will do you no good out here. That's an animal of some kind. And you know the common wisdom about wild animals. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. Kind of difficult to prove that right at the moment. Not that I want to prove it today.
With that, Annie doubled her speed and moved as fast as the kayak on her head would allow her. The ground grew rocky under her feet, and she was forced to slow her step. It was all she could manage to keep panic from stealing her reason entirely.
Well, just about halfway there. It's not far now. Don't fall, Annie. Hate to skin your knee and have to explain you fell running away from some imaginary...
Ah!
Whoa, wild man!
With all pretense of propriety aside, Annie ran at top speed over the rocky, uneven ground, the unsinkable 3, rocking from side to side atop her shoulders.
I know I shouldn't be afraid, but I can't help it. Oh, if only I didn't have this.
Give me that!
Kayak on top of my head! Good heavens!
Annie was shocked to discover her load lightened as suddenly the entire bulk of unsinkable 3 was lifted away.
Good gracious heavens me!
For as the faithful kayak rose up off Annie's shoulders and into the air, it revealed a massive bulk of a creature, a man, or something like a man, covered from head to foot with greenish-brown matted fur, his mouth a mass of sharp teeth, and his eyes as black as midnight. It was the Wild Man!
Ugh, what is that smell?
Quiet, you! You bring floaty thing into my swamp. I take floaty thing.
Floaty thing? Are you referring to my intrepid kayak, the unsinkable 3?
Oh, me don't know, we miss. No floaty thing is no more.
You've crushed my kayak.
No floaty things. This my swamp, not yours.
Who or what are you?
I king of entire swamp. Who you?
I am called Kayak Annie, Northwoods librarian. I am a simple bringer of books and periodicals to all the people of this region so that literacy and education may reign supreme.
All people? All people? You say me not people?
Well, that is,
I live in this swamp before your kind come to these woods. Even before others come, I am here.
The others? Are you speaking of the tribes?
The others. They call themselves Ojibwe and Chippewa, just like you call yourself librarian.
Oh, that's not the same. Although I suppose we are somewhat like a tribe.
What your tribe have to trade? I have moss. What you got for moss?
Well, I have books.
Ugh, what are books?
These are books here in my pack.
They don't smell very good. What they taste like?
No, you don't understand. You don't eat them. You read them. Good heavens!
On second thought, this don't taste too bad.
Stop that this instant. You can't eat library books.
Me no see you stopping me.
But they're not edible. They're literature.
Literature.
That's Shakespeare you're ripping up.
He tasty fellow. Tell you what, I give you half my moss for more books.
What?
Fine, all my moss.
You don't understand. You are destroying something precious and important.
Not destroying, just eating. Same as eating plants of the woods or meat of the deer or rocks of the cave.
You eat rocks?
Important to have minerals in your diet. Me gonna need more minerals if me keep eating these books. Me gonna get fat.
Fat?
Ah, too many carbs.
No, stop. Cease, please. Would you please stop eating the books for one moment and let me talk to you?
Talk to me. Lady Librarian been here 2 minutes, hasn't shut up yet.
Look, just look at the pages you're ripping. Do you see these black marks all over them?
You gotta clean up your kitchen before cooking next time.
No, you don't understand. Those are called letters. And letters fit together to form words, and words sentences, and so on.
And so on, and so on, and so on. Librarian lady never shut up, do she?
My point is you don't eat them, you read them.
What reading?
What's reading? Well, it's like carrying on a conversation with a person who isn't even there.
So you and me could be talking without you here?
In a sense, yes.
Me like the sound of that. You go away and me stay here with books. We have long talk.
Stop, please. I'm begging you.
I give you nothing. You trespass on my swamp.
But I only meant to travel through. You can't expect me to know it's your swamp. I mean, there are no signs or anything.
There are signs. The bear, the wolf, he reads signs.
What kinds of signs are you using?
Just smell the base of the tree, you'll find out.
Ugh, you mean you're marking the trees?
When you gotta go, you gotta go.
Wait, that's it.
So glad you agree.
No, I mean I have a great idea. Say, Mr. Wildman, sir, how would you like to put up a sign that will keep all of my kind out of your swamp forever?
No more nosy librarians? Keep talking.
All right, but it will take some work. You have to learn how to read.
No, I don't want to.
Yeah, you're right. After all, most of the people said you'd be too stupid to learn anyway.
They did? Stupid, non-hairy short people say me dum-dum-head?
Yes, it was quite a shock to me, too.
I show them. I read the snot out of those little black dots.
Well, I suppose there are worse ways to begin one's march towards literacy.
And so began the strangest odyssey that Kayak Annie had ever undertook, teaching a half-crazed wild man to read.
This one, A. This one, B.
Very good.
C, D. Look, this one looked like spider on his side.
That's called an E. And if you think that looks like a spider, notice the letter M.
Ah, spider!
Oh, dear. You've broken another table.
She came back to the swamp week after week for months.
The cat sat on the mat.
Very good.
Reading fun.
The summer turned to winter and back to summer again, until finally came the day when Annie stood at the edge of Bog Marsh Swamp with the wild man. She had nailed a piece of wood to a tall tree, and the wild man stood before it with a can of red paint and a brush that was dwarfed by his hand.
Oh, me nervous.
You can do it. Just go ahead.
No.
That's good. That's perfect. You've written no. Now go ahead with the rest.
Me no think I can.
Oh, go on, just like we practiced.
But it's so long.
Oh, go on. You'll be fine. I'll be right here next to you.
Okay, start with T, right?
That's right.
T, trespassing.
You did it. No trespassing, it says.
And this will keep all librarians and other short hairless creatures out of my swamp?
It will. And if anyone ignores this sign, tell them there will be no more books from Kayak Annie until they apologize and promise to stay away.
Okay, but I better pee on the sign just to be sure.
And I should be going.
It was the strangest and most rewarding chapter of Kayak Annie's illustrious career. For though most humans stayed away from the wild man's swamp, Annie herself made monthly visits to the domain of the large hairy creature, and she never came empty-handed.
Annie, me finish Encyclopedia Brown. Me start on Hardy Boys next.
And his progress month to month was remarkable.
Goodness, you've read all these already?
Well, yes, Miss Annie. Maybe you could come twice next month?
And so ended the most famous chapter in the history of Kayak Annie, the woman who taught the wild man of Bog Swamp Marsh to read.
Hey, you got any more of those Twilight books?
Though perhaps not to read well.
Hey, that is Kayak Annie. Your announcer was Justin Kapla. Various voices by Jeff Adams and Charis, and Kayak Annie is Diane Adams.